One last thing inside of the create order method of the order class is this block starting with the SQL statement when we insert records into the table, and then obviously is an if, is an empty ID, and so on. So what we're going to do is remove all this, and we're going to start with a try and catch statement. And this is the place we're actually going to be using our transaction methods, which we've created inside of the database class earlier. So PDO exception we're going to be catching rather than the standard exception, represented by E variable. And what we're going to be doing inside of this catch statement, first I'm going to simply go for this underscore DB, and we go for roll back, meaning everything that's happened inside of this try statement, roll it back. I don't want any of these changes, because this is the place basically when we are starting a transaction, we're telling PDO basically if any of the statements fails, then obviously if we call this rollback on it, then roll all of these changes back. In other words, obviously if we inserted record to one table, then inserted another to another table, updated another table, and then fourth statement for any reason has failed, then all the previous statements will roll back to its original state. Basically none of these changes will take place. So we have this rollback, and the last thing we simply return false here, because we're obviously returning whether it's true or false Boolean value from this method. Then inside of the try statement, we're going to start with this underscore DB, our database class, which we're extending which we've instantiated inside of the application class, which is obviously used to inherit basically from within this order class. Then we go for begin transaction. So we telling our database class we are now beginning the transaction. Look for any kind of problems. If there's any problem, throw the PDO exception, which it will do by default anyway. So now we're going for this underscore DB again, and we're using insert transaction. We're not using insert, we're using insert transaction, because insert transaction, when it's executed, it's not wrapping the code in between try and catch statements, you may remember from when we were creating our new database class. So because we want this exception to be thrown inside of this try statement, obviously, if we were using just insert, the exception would be caught inside of the insert statement, and it wouldn't throw any exceptions obviously within our try and catch statement here. So that's why we've used a different approach here, to make sure that if it's throwing any exception, then we can catch it and basically use this rollback method. Okay, so we inserting the transaction first. We adding all these records to our table, which is the table orders, and then we pass in the array which we've just created. So all of these records, all of these values are now going to this table. If anything wrong happened, basically if anything hasn't been successful, this statement will throw the exception. We're going to go straight to this catch statement, and we roll back all of the changes. Then we go and assign the ID, which we've retrieved from this insert transaction, to our ID property, which is obviously inside of the application. Application class is what we're extending inside of the order class. So we go for this underscore DB, and we want to get the ID of the last inserted record. Now we're going for the for each loop, and we're going to be looking through all of the items inside of the basket class. So this underscore items as item. Inside of this for each loop, we're going to start with this underscore DB insert transaction, another insert transaction, only this time we add into this underscore table 2, which is table order items, and then array. And the array will contain, first field is the order field, which is basically the ID of the order this specific item is referring to, this ID. Then we have product, which is item ID. Then we have price, which is item price. Then we have quantity, which is this underscore basket, which is basically containing all of the items inside of the basket session. And now we go for the item. We're looking for the ID as key, and then we want the associated quantity. So this is the quantity. And after this insert transaction statement, which is basically going to run for each of the items inside of this items array, after the for each, we simply go for this underscore database commit, which basically means proceed with all these statements. And then we simply return true. If none of this has thrown any exception, then we return true because everything has been successful.